All right, we're going to go over goal setting now. Ooh, I went ahead. Oh, wait, no, I did. Okay. Um, so some of the things to talk about for successful goal setting, and this is going to be part of your main project for the class. So we want to make sure that we're setting really good, clear goals. And I'm just going to start with examples for exercise. So regardless of whatever your goal is, you want to understand what your specific motivations are. And there's a little bit more information about motivation in the additional notes. But really finding what your motivation is, making sure that it's the right time to make whatever changes that you want to make. And it's okay to start thinking about goals that you're not ready to start until, let's say, the end of summer. So that's okay to do as well. Um, but I'm going to start with an example for common reasons for starting exercise. So you can think about, I want to start increasing my fruits and vegetables, or I want to make sure that I'm sleeping more. Whatever your specific goals are, that's fine. But this is just easier to kind of give some examples. So common reasons for starting exercise: to get healthier or fit, have fun, meet people, or exercise in a group, set and achieve goals. Because sometimes you want to set a goal just because you want to be able to check the box and say you met it, and that gives you motivation and rewards for doing other things as well. It's a personal challenge that's fun. You might not need to do it. So this would be an example of, I really want to just try something new. You're already healthy, you're already pretty well in your overall assessment of your dimensions of wellness that you've already completed. And let's say you're actually pretty good in all of those, but you still have to complete this assignment. You still have to set goals. And so maybe this is it. Just set and achieve goals because it feels good to achieve something. So you might do it that way. And then for the example of starting exercise, maybe it is you want to lose weight or look better in your clothes or feel more comfortable or whatever it might be. So those would be just some examples. So think about whatever your goal is and then thinking about why you might want to change those goals. And then, of course, going back to the different changes of behavior change, which we already went to, when you're making goals, you have to really think about where you are right now. So whether you're pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and then you're probably, hopefully you're not in a termination or relapse stage, but that's just part of recognizing what that would be. So the example of just setting goals to achieve them, you would have a termination point because you've met your goal. Now you move on to another one. So assessing where you are to start, and then things to think about for successful goal setting. So you want to make sure that you're setting reasonable goals, and goal setting itself, it kind of just seems simple, but it's really not. A lot of times people set New Year's resolutions, and then if you ask most people by February or definitely by March, did you set a New Year's resolution? Yes. Did you accomplish it? No. Or are you still, in a good process with your goal? And then most of the time you'll find that if people have made New Year's resolutions and they started it but they fell off, if you ask them, did you write it down? Most of the time they didn't write it down. Or how did you write your goal and what did you do? And so most of the time it's just not really thought out. It's just, I'm gonna get more fit. That doesn't really mean anything, right? I'm gonna exercise more. What does that mean? So I could say, I'm gonna exercise more. Great. That means I'm going to, I don't know, get up and walk 5 minutes. I did more exercise than I did, but that's not really specific. Um, So SMART goal, you might actually find in different programs, you'll see SMART stand for something slightly different, but specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-oriented. Most of the times if you see something different in a SMART goal, it's the A. So oftentimes you might see the A rather than action-oriented as acceptable. But I like this model better because acceptable and realistic, I feel really overlap. And we want to make sure when we're making SMART goals that we have a specific plan in place. And so this allows us to incorporate that into our goal itself. So anytime you have a very concrete SMART goal, it increases your chances for success. And then along with it, there's other things to think about which go along with your project as well. So thinking about making a personal commitment. So in your project, you're going to kind of go over and think about what you want to do and the reasons why you want to do that. So thinking of really concrete reasons to maintain, again, going with the example of just fitness. Developing new behaviors takes a lot of perseverance. Changing behavior is really hard, and sticking to that behavior can be really hard, especially when you might not be in a really consistent schedule or routine just because of your age and school and jobs and everything else changes constantly. So it can be a little bit difficult. So again, going back to the exercise. So we make our SMART goal, and then we think about, okay, what do I want to do? And then what might get in my way? So examples for exercise barriers might be personal or environmental. So examples of environmental, maybe I live in an area where I don't really feel safe exercising outside or outside by myself. Maybe there's poor weather, whether it's winter or it's too hot, or the air quality is poor where you are. If you exercise at a facility like a gym, the facility hours might not work for your work schedule. So you get off work and the gym closes and you don't have time, or you can't get up early enough to go to the gym by the time it opens, because by the time you finish your workout, showered and got ready, you'd be late for work. So there's a lot of things to think about in the environment that in some ways are completely out of your control, and other times we might be able to figure out ways around it. And then we've got the personal ones, which usually have a lot more impediment to our success than the environmental ones. It's usually easier to find ways around the environmental problems and the personal problems. So most people can use the excuse of lack of time. I'm in that right there as well. There just doesn't seem to be enough time to do everything or to do it well. Oftentimes we have poor self-motivation, and that can come from a variety of reasons, some of which might be over in your notes as well. Maybe you just have an injury, and having an injury sets you back, and then the longer you go without, in this example with exercise, the harder it is sometimes to get started again. And then whatever your starting level of fitness or weight is can be hard. There's many people when we're thinking about fitness that don't like to go into gyms or in a public setting to exercise because they're so overweight, they feel self-conscious about it. So that stops them from making the steps to actually get to a comfortable place where they don't feel embarrassed by it. So you can use this in different ways. So if you're thinking about, let's say, changing your eating habits, what are some of the environmental issues that would impact that? Well, maybe where you live, you're in a food desert and you don't have close proximity to get good, healthy food. Maybe it's way more expensive given the area that you live to find access to good, healthy food. And then, thinking about the distance traveled, if you are in a food desert, you might not have proper transportation to get that food. Or maybe where you live, you don't have access to store properly or to cook the food that you would like to. And then you think about eating healthy and you have personal issues, that could be lack of time, could be on there as well, poor self-motivation to cook, prepare, plan. You might not know how to cook. You might not know how to properly store, preserve food so that they don't spoil. Lack of money to buy good, healthy food. There's, just whatever you were brought up with as far as meal patterns and eating habits that your family has instilled in you. That can be hard to combat in order to start making healthier choices. Living with roommates or significant others impacting the food that you eat. So we can think of, which could go personal and also environmental. But we need to think about this regardless of what our goal is. So again, my example was just exercise and food as well. So then we have to think about what are those barriers, and then how do we overcome those barriers or obstacles. So time is usually the biggest issue. So how do we prioritize? How do we make time or adjust our schedule to do this? If you're thinking about exercise, you have 24 hours in a day. Can we spare one of that 24 hours for exercise? Can we spare 30 minutes out of the 24 hours to exercise? Or how can we prep ahead of time for food or for meals or snacks so that we don't feel like we're investing a significant amount of time daily on it? So how can we somehow figure out how to make time or make more efficient time? And this goes back to the last section when we talked about time management and figuring out what we're doing that is a time waster or time suck. Can you watch TV while you're prepping your meal so you get both done at the same time? It's also good when you're thinking about these to set up a reward structure. And then when you're doing this, when you're setting up reward structure, set up internal and or external. So you can do one or the other or both. So examples of, if we go back to the exercise, really this could be anything, right? So internals are just how you feel. So you're exercising regularly, you feel good. You have a sense of accomplishment. You feel better about yourself. You increase self-esteem. You're sleeping better. You feel like you have better interpersonal relationships and whatever it might be. So those internal feelings of it just feels good. You're eating healthier foods, and so you feel better about your choices, and you physically feel better as well. Some external ones, obviously external is coming from outside yourself. So maybe you haven't exercising and your body composition has changed, and so you're feeling rewarding yourself with new clothes. I put the celebration meal in here, which can be tricky. So one thing you don't want to do is, let's say your goal is to lose weight, and then a reward is to eat a lot of food. That would not be a good reward, right? So how can you reward yourself in a way that continues to foster good progress in your behavior and your goals and achieving your goals? So setting up rewards is really important. And then we have to think about, whenever we're making these changes, we want to think about making a lifelong commitment, so modifying so that we can establish new behaviors. Your additional notes talk a little bit about that, and how our body kind of works and gets stuck in these habits or ruts. But really thinking about the changes you're making and how you can instill those not just for a short amount of time. So let's say, for example, there's a lot of diets out there that are, you could tell they're a quick fix, and some of them are literally saying that they're only for 30 days, like the Whole30. What is it doing for my lifelong commitment to my health? Is this setting me up for success, right? So whenever you're making these goals, think about your overall behavior and how that is going to be long lasting. So some things to think about, right? Assess your beliefs and attitudes and how you got to where you are. What is your motivation? Anticipate, make plans to overcome those barriers that we talked about. Making personal commitments, and then really checking in with yourself regularly, so that you know that you're on the right track and you understand why that you're doing that. So recording and tracking progress over time. It's one of the best ways to stay on track, is just to keep a little log. You can put as much or as little detail as you want, but important thing to do is to write down the things that you've done and you've done well, but also write the things that maybe they're little setbacks. So that way you can look back at it and see, okay, I've been doing this. Here's these little setbacks that I keep having, and you might not have realized it until you look back on it later, so you can make those adjustments as you need, and you can move forward. There's a lot of web-based tracking tools for different things. Some of them incorporate all aspects. So there are some that incorporate just food, some that are fitness, some that are in getting back to the mind and body interaction, and really getting more towards like the psychological health and well-being. So there's web-based, there's apps, there's so many things out there, and you might find one that works really well for you. And then for your project as well, thinking about setting short and achievable goals, so short-term goals, and then also long-term goals. So sometimes if you have a really big goal, it's nice to break that out into like 2 or 3 smaller goals, so you can kind of check that box. You succeeded in one area, now move on, and it builds it, so it's a little bit easier to attain and keep track of. So I'm just going to go over really quick some examples of a SMART goal, because you're going to be expected to do the SMART goal for your assignment, and you need to make sure that you do it right. So let's say here's an example of a SMART goal. So I want to improve my cardiorespiratory fitness level from poor to good. And as you go through, if you haven't looked through your personal health assessments, one of them is to track your cardiorespiratory fitness level, and you have options for it. So this one I just use the example of I will complete. So specific as I want to improve my cardiorespiratory fitness level from poor to good. So I didn't just say I want to improve my fitness. That wouldn't mean anything, right? I have a specific rating of when I did my Rockport walk test, I was rated as poor. So I really want to get it back up to good. So that's a very specific goal. I will measure this, so I will complete the Rockport walk test each month to compare my score to my initial score, and that'll help to see if I'm on track. My action plan is I will run for 30 minutes at 75% of my estimated max heart rate, which is part of your assignments as well, and I'll do that 3 times a week. So that's really a specific action plan. You can go into more detail about that as well. And then realistic, yes, it's realistic. I've done this before. 75% is not a really hard intensity to start with. And then times, I'll start this on June 14th, and I will start to see improvements by September 1st. So there's all different ways you can do this. So what would not be a good goal is if I said, I am going to exercise more. Great. What kind of exercise are you going to do? Are you going to sit on your couch and just lift up like a beer can and call that fitness? Or are you going to go hike? Are you going to run? Are you going to weightlift? Like, what are you actually going to do? Be very specific, and very specific on how you measure it. So if you make your S your goal, and you can't answer the MART, then you need to reassess if that's a specific enough goal. So here's another example. I will increase my vegetable intake from 1 serving a day to 3 servings a day. I will measure this by creating a chart that I can check off each time I consume a serving. You can even say I'm going to pre-package my vegetables. They're gone every day. I've done it, right? You can be creative about how you do it. Sometimes it seems a little silly. Action is I will prepare my vegetable servings the day before, and I will base my meals around my vegetable servings. Yes, this is realistic. I'm only starting with 3 servings a day, and I used to eat this when I lived at home. And then I'll start this July 1st because I'm not ready right now, let's say. I'm not in a good place where I'm going to eat vegetables consistently. I'm aware of that, so I'm going to push that out a little bit. I'm going to be really specific with my time frame here. So I'm going to start this on July 1st, and I will be consistent with this goal for at least 5 out of 7 days per week until January 2019. And I'll reassess to see if I'm ready to go 7 out of 7, or if I want to increase from 3 to 5 servings a day, right? So you can get very specific. And again, since you start off with being realistic about, what is that word? Being realistic about what stage you're in, then that's going to be really helpful. So I want to open up here. Oh, not that. Hold on. Okay, so this is your assignment for the SMART goals. And so this is where you're going to write, my goal is to increase the number of push-ups I do from 10 to 20 in one sitting, right? That's really specific. How am I going to measure it? Is I'm going to have a friend count for me, or I'm just going to count it every week, and I'm going to see if I improve, and I'm going to keep track of that in a journal. What am I going to do is I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 push-ups in a certain time frame, or whatever it might be. Plus I'm also going to do bench press and other lifts, so I can be very specific about my action plan and how often I'm going to do that. And then is this realistic? Yes. Because I'm not setting an outrageous goal, right? So can you physically do that? Yeah, I can do 10 now, and I haven't really been training for this. So if I actually put effort into this, yeah, I can definitely do that amount of push-ups. And then what date do you project meeting this goal? Is I should be able to complete that many push-ups by the end of the summer. That's realistic given the goal that I'm making. And then you're going to justify your goal. So why do you want to accomplish this? And then the next part, you're going to be specific, because this is just getting you started, and this is just one example. So here I'm just using examples related to fitness. You don't have to do that, right? So we've got all different areas, and we haven't covered a whole lot of material yet. So what you make for your SMART goals right now might not be what you do for your project, and that's totally fine. It's just to get you in the process of making very specific goals. So what are 2 short-term goals that you might do that helps you kind of accomplish that? And then this goes over how to make, give you a good way of making your objective statements, just giving you examples. And most of this, again, just stuff with the theme of exercise. And so then here, so my short-term goal, I would just reiterate just the specific part. So I'm going, my short-term goal is 3 times a week to do 4 sets of 10 push-ups within a certain time frame, right? And then I would make my objective statements and using some of the tips here. So I'm going to do it, make time for it in the morning, and set an alarm, or I'm going to have my roommate come and join me so that we can make sure that we do this. So we'll do that for both. And then we're going to pick one of those, one of the SMART goals, which might be, this can overlap with these, or it can be something different. And then what are the barriers? And then 2 strategies to overcome. So I'm tired. If my plan is to get up early in the morning, what if I stay up too late and I'm really tired? How am I going to overcome those things, right? So think about 2 barriers or obstacles and 2 strategies to overcome it. And that's it. So what I'm going to do when I kind of grade this is really just making sure that you've done it, one, and that your goal is very specific, so that you get feedback on making sure that you're doing it correctly for your final project. And that is it for your SMART goals.